isn't that great? I was just telling the folks a nice story, and greed set in. I was telling the audience, I only got halfway through it. A little cat died and went to heaven. And so they said, now, if there's anything that you would like to have, you just let us know, because we want you to be happy. He said, well, all my life I wanted a big white satin pillow to sleep on. They said, no problem, no problem. So they go to their office. In comes a delegation of little mice. And they said, you have a problem? He says, yeah. That commissary is so far away from where we're stationed that when we're hungry time, we get back where we are. We thought maybe you could get us little roller skates or something. They said, no problem, no problem. So they go back to see the cat a couple of days later. And he said, how you doing? He said, oh, now I know what they mean by heaven. He said, that pillow is just wonderful. And that Meal on Wheels is great.
Now, one thing I remember reading this. You did, I don't know how many shows the Red Skelton show was on. How many? But
20 consecutive years.
now you own the rights to all of those tapes, and
Yes.
you made the statement that you may ask for them to be burned upon your demise.
No.
Good.
No, I'll tell you what that was all. I play a lot of colleges,
Right.
and the college students, they ask all the time, when are we going to see your reruns?
Oh,
See?
yeah.
So this one day I go in, and they were talking about art. I go into colleges. I go in residence for 3 days. First day I give each day I give talks with questions and answers. First day's political science, propaganda, and communications. Second day's religions. Third day's theatrical arts. So these students asked, they says, did you read about that Indian out in Arizona that burned all of his paintings because they were going to charge whatever he sold the last painting for? In case he died, that would be paid to the government. So he burned all of those paintings. So then someone says, what are you going to do if you don't release your paintings? I said, I'll do what the Indian did. See? That's how this started.
Oh.
Nothing was said. And about a year later, someone says, I understand that you're going to burn your paintings. I said, uh-oh. I mean, your reruns. So I said, uh-oh, I've created an interest now. They're interested. You know.
I got their attention. Huh?
I've got their attention. I says, yeah, that's what I'll do. If they don't release them before I die, they say, how do you know when you're going to die? I said, I'll put it in my will. So that's how that all got started.
So when are we going to see the reruns of the Red Skelton? Wouldn't it be great to see? Oh, incredible! Oh, yes! Oh.
Well, I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why I haven't released them. I don't think anybody should have to pay money at a box office or invite into their home to hear things that they can read on public bathroom walls. See?
Right.
Now, I did a Christmas special for home box office. My contract read that the show in front of me, the show behind me, cannot have violence or vulgarities, because you can watch 3 shows in a row and you can't remember who said what. So they presented this Christmas show, and some people came up on the street and they said, I thought you didn't do little risque jokes and stuff. I said, well, I try not to. They said, how did you get away with this? And I said, I didn't say that. They says, yeah.
Oh,
No. It was Eddie Murphy. He was on before you.
Oh.
So when they came to me and says, when you want to do the next movie? I says, you don't have enough money.
Does it upset you when you see these comedians today? It must
It's a shortcut for thinking, dear heart.
Is that what it is?
Now, Eddie Murphy's a
Boy.
funny man.
He is,
Richard Pryor is a funny man. But they do these things, I think, because they're frightened.
Is that why they do it?
Insecurity. We know these things, you know, and they talk about sex education and stuff. Christ, with the population the way it is, can you imagine what it'd be if we knew what we were doing? Yeah. Yeah.
Tell them. It was Ed Wynn that actually, and I don't know, he bought a newspaper from you as a newspaper
I was selling
boy?
newspapers. I was 9 years old at the time, on the corner of 5th and Main at Vincennes, Indiana. And this gentleman came up and he said, what are they doing in this town for excitement? And I said, well, there's a big New York road show in town tonight with a comedian. Ed Wynn is his name. I said, there's his name up there. It was right across from the theater. And I said, that's what I'm going to do when I get older. I'm going to try to make people laugh, you know. So he says, you going to see the show tonight? I said, no, I don't have that kind of money. He said, I know the manager of the theater. If you come down, I'll see that you get in. I said, well, I got to sell my papers. So I had 3 papers left, and he gave me $1. And papers were only 3 cents a piece in those days.
Ooh.
And if you tore the headline and the name of the paper off at the top, you take it back. You had to buy the paper for 1.50 cents, see?
Right.
And you have to buy 2 or 3 papers at a time. So I'd buy them and sell them. But if you turn the headline back in, they give you your
another
money
paper,
back.
right?
See, they give you money back. So I went home and I told my mother, and I gave her the $1, and she gave me a dime. She said, now you come right straight home. So I went down to the theater, and I didn't know if he'd be there or not. She gave me a dime, a nickel for popcorn and nickel for car fare on the way home. So I go down, and here's this man standing in front of the theater, and I said, well, he's a nice fella, see? So I'm sitting in the balcony, and all of a sudden, a body comes through the curtain. And I look real close. I said to the people around me, that's my friend down there. He got me this. I said, no, he got me my seat here. I said, shh. They were trying to shush me down. So at the intermission, I ran from the balcony down backstage, and all the stagehands knew I was stage struck anyhow, because I hung around. They says, get out of here. And he was standing there. He says, no. He says, let him in. Let him in. You remember Edwin and all?
Is that how we talk?
Yes. He said, here, come in. He had great jokes, like he says, hello. He always carried a telephone with him. Hello, I'm over at Caboose. CBS, Caboose. He said, you want to come over and see me? You know how to get here? You come down Sunset, you turn on Fairfax. Fairfax is the Jewish neighborhood in Los Angeles. He says, you come down Fairfax, and you go by all the stores, and when you come to one that doesn't have a salami hanging in the window, that is Caboose. So he says to me, he says, how do you like the show? I said, fine. So he says, you ever seen an audience before? I said, no. So he held me up to the asbestos curtain. They had a curtain that used to come down for fire regulations. Fire regulations. So he held me up, and I saw the audience coming back in, and I fell in love with them.
Was that your first
That's
audience?
my family. That's been my family all these years.
How extraordinary.
So he says to me, those are called border lights up there. Those are the border lights. He says, in front of the curtain, there's lights they call footlights. So you want to be a comedian, huh? Well, remember, just do comedy. Always say funny things. Not only say funny things, do funny things. But when you say things, say them funny. See? Now the scene changes. We kept in correspondence with each other all these years. I go down for a wardrobe fitting to the studio, and he's doing his first serious role in the rec room for a heavyweight. I look over and I see a car parked, and I look real close. I said, well, it looks like Ed Wynn. I go over, and he's drunk, and he didn't drink. And I says, Ed, what's the matter? He says, I can't go on and do this. He says, the day the show's going to go on tonight. He says, I'm not going on. I said, come on. I stayed with him all day. We filled him with coffee and stuff. I found out one thing. Never give a drunk coffee.
Why?
Well, because then you got a loudmouth drunk, it's full of coffee. See?
Better they go to sleep.
Better they go to sleep. So anyhow, he did the show. Now, they showed it to the East Coast. Then they have a kinescope in those days that they ran later on the West Coast. And I sent him a telegram. I says, Ed, you were wonderful, but remember, just do comedy. Yeah.
Great story.
Yeah.
We need to take a break. We're back after this with the amazing Mr. Red Skelton.